As the NBA draft process continues to unfold for the world's top prospects, two players that have caught the eyes of many fans are Amen and Ausar Thompson, the 6'7" twins who have spent the last 2 seasons being the torch carriers for Overtime Elite, a professional developmental league designed for high-level prospects aged 16 through 20 looking to take an alternative route to the NBA. The Thompsons are set to be the first OTE players drafted in the program's history, and more than just that, they're expected to be top 10 picks in the upcoming draft and have legitimate star potential moving forward thanks to their elite athleticism and feel for the game. The Thompsons are set to become the 4th pair of twins to be taken in the first round of the same NBA draft, and the first since Markieff and Marcus Morris did so in 2011. And while they are identical, their games are somewhat distinct. So let's get to know the Thompsons and see why people are so excited about their NBA futures. Before getting into their differences though, they are still twins, and they obviously share a lot of similar traits. I mean, just look at their regular season stats from Overtime Elite. The two are within a stone's throw of each other when it comes to pretty much every single statistical category, and to be honest, it was sometimes hard to distinguish which twin was which when they were on the floor at the same time. Like in this game, where they obnoxiously decided to wear uniforms that barely showed the number, and the only real way to distinguish them was the fact that Ausar was wearing a black wristband. But still, both Thompsons share the same basic characteristics. They're great athletes, they have high basketball IQ, they both thrive in transition, they both are capable of making plays with the ball in their hands, they're very solid defenders despite some lapses that may suggest otherwise, and they both struggle mightily as shooters. But let's start with Amen, who right now is thought to be a slightly better prospect than Ausar, and the reasoning behind this is where the main difference between the two comes into play. While they are both the same height and have generally the same build, Amen has started to separate himself from his brother primarily due to his perceived upside as a primary playmaker. The two played on the same City Reapers team in the Overtime Elite League, and it was Amen who was the one initiating offense for the majority of the time, and it's easy to see why. First, when I say Amen is a great athlete, I'm probably underselling it, because simply put, not only is he a great athlete, he'll probably be a 99th percentile athlete the second he gets drafted in the NBA. The combination of speed, twitchiness, power, and pure vertical explosion is unmatched, and because of these traits, Amen Thompson is a walking paint touch. The second he gets the ball, he's able to break down defenders with his speed and get into the teeth of the defense and get them in rotation, which is ultimately the first goal of any NBA offense. Once the defense is moving and recovering, things open up for you offensively, which makes the game a lot simpler. And when you have someone like Amen Thompson, who can create that type of defensive chaos on his own, it becomes a massive advantage for your offense. But once you're in the paint, you have to be able to take advantage of that situation, and Amen can do this both as a driver and as a passer. While he does have some wonky finishing mechanics and he does tend to avoid contact a little bit too much for my liking, Amen still has tremendous acrobatic ability that allows him to finish while contorting his body in midair to insane degrees. Amen's playmaking is also a plus here because of how well he sees the floor. He's able to find open teammates after collapsing the defense, and this is an incredibly valuable skill to have that many of the league's best playmakers also possess. While his shooting is a major concern, as he only hits around 25% of his threes and the shot itself has a lot of mechanical issues, we have seen a recent uptick in primary ball handlers with elite athleticism that can still be really effective despite the lack of a jumper. Players like Ja Morant and Markelle Fultz come to mind in this regard, and I think Amen could easily find himself in that category, especially early in his career while the jump shot develops. Defensively though, Amen is a strange evaluation. On the one hand, he's really athletic, has quick hands, moves his feet well, and has good length. Overall, he's a very promising defender as someone who can guard multiple positions and not give anything up athletically. He's very sound on the ball, and he does a great job at stepping up out of screens and staying attached to his man. He's also disruptive with his length, and while he does succumb to some cheap fouls occasionally, his overall activity is good. Off the ball though is where things get a little bit dicey. While he can certainly be impactful in this role, he also shows some causes for concern. You'd sometimes see Amen make a half-hearted effort at swiping at the ball in the backcourt before just letting his man go by him, or he'd get caught up right in his stance a lot, and that's something that will be exploited in the NBA with guys crashing the glass and cutting more consistently. Overtime Elite in general didn't place a league-wide coaching emphasis on offensive rebounding or boxing out, so it's really tough to see the negative consequences of Amen's lack of defensive discipline in real time. Still, he can make some absolutely jaw-dropping plays thanks to his athleticism. He can snag passes or rotate quickly to meet bigger players at the summit for impressive blocks, and overall I think a better structure will allow Amen to shine even more as a defender. So now let's talk about Ausar Thompson, who similarly to his brother is a smooth and glidey 6'7" athlete, but is thought to be a slightly less impressive prospect than his brother because he's more of a wing than a guard. Still, Ausar brings a lot of talent to the table. He's a phenomenal play connector thanks to his high feel and quick decision making, as he's awesome at receiving passes and then immediately finding open teammates for easy baskets. He also has a very good sense of where people are on the floor despite not having the ball a whole lot, which I think shows his high overall engagement level on that end. Despite Amen being seen as the point guard, it was actually Ausar who averaged more assists per game this year during Overtime Elite, which I think bodes extremely well for his career moving forward, as he projects as the type of in-between player that NBA teams tend to covet. He's really good at getting into the nooks of the defense and making decisions, and this allows him to be used in a variety of ways. I could see him really thriving as a weak side 45 cutter off of drives, or even as a screen and roll threat in smaller lineups. A lot of people liken Ausar to Andre Iguodala, which I definitely understand, as they are both super high feel wings with lockdown defensive traits. Speaking of defense, Ausar projects as one of the most promising wing defenders in the draft, as he has the flexibility and natural bend to defend players smaller than him, while also possessing the strength to guard up a little bit as well. He's really good at sticking with guards on the perimeter, as he can use his length to contain them while also possessing the core strength to stonewall them if they try to drive on him. While he does have a great sense of how to play off the ball defensively, he does seem to lack a consistent intensity in that area. But I think this is more of an Overtime Elite thing than an Ausar Thompson thing. More on that in a minute. Despite these stints of perhaps not giving 100% effort, he still averaged over 3 steals and a block per game. So he has the playmaking instincts and the athletic pop that allow him to be a potential all-defense candidate in the future. While his jump shot isn't promising either, I think he can still thrive as a slashing wing off the ball. But I think this is still part of the reason as to why he's considered to be a worse prospect than Amen, since the lack of shooting for a wing is much more detrimental to a team than the lack of shooting for a point guard. But if he can develop this aspect of his game, and there was a massive improvement in his shooting from year 1 to year 2 in Overtime Elite, I don't think there's anything that keeps him off an NBA floor. While the Thompsons are both really impressive players and prospects, they come with obvious question marks. I've already touched on their shooting, which collectively seems to be the Twins' biggest area of improvement, but I am also really iffy on their path to the NBA. Despite the impressive nature of their accomplishments, it's really important to note that Overtime Elite, while not short of high-end talent, has a lot of flaws that make it difficult to evaluate the players that participate in it. The league itself is comprised of only 6 teams, 3 teams with Overtime Elite players, and the other 3 being prep high schools that participate in the league in addition to their other games. So Amen and Ausar Thompson, who both turned 20 last January, are playing a large part of their games against players 2 to 3 years younger than them. In addition to that, the games all seem to lack a sense of urgency and intensity that you would typically find in a college game or other professional leagues across the world. Very often you'd see players not getting back on defense, not boxing out, carelessly turning the ball over and taking bad shots, and while that certainly happens in other leagues, even the NBA, the difference with Overtime Elite was that there didn't seem to be any consequences for these mistakes. This was mainly the case because of the insanely fast and chaotic pace of the games. Because there were so many possessions, teams in the league weren't all that concerned with individual plays because they knew they could just go down and score in 5 seconds and it would be forgiven. And then you throw in things like the weird big bonus that Overtime Elite has, where it's basically a 5-on-4 power play after a certain amount of team fouls, and the fact that the entire game seems to be played in transition, and you realize just how different it is from NBA basketball. As a result of this, the games were sloppy and frankly a mess to watch, so for me, it's difficult to draw any real scouting conclusions about players in Overtime Elite, which is unfortunate because that's the primary setting in which we saw the Thompsons over the last 2 years. And while I don't think their draft stock or anything was hurt by playing in this league, I don't think we were able to see Amen and Ausar Thompson at their best while playing in it. But luckily, we do have a saving grace. One modern game that allows us to draw real conclusions about the Thompsons as prospects. And it's all thanks to the basketball tournament. For those who don't know, the basketball tournament is a single elimination competition that brings together pros from all over the world to compete for a winner-take-all cash prize of $1 million. The Thompson twins were allowed to compete in the 2022 tournament, and they played as part of Team Overtime. And while they lost their opening game to a Creighton alumni team, we were able to see the talents that make them such highly coveted prospects, with Amen slicing through defenses and generating rim pressure, and Ausar being a lockdown defender and fluid connector. And it's important to note that this was coming in a game against legitimate professional basketball players. not the teenagers that you would see them play during Overtime Elite games. Both Amen and Ausar finished with 9 points each, taking all the good of what they showed during Overtime Elite and applying it to a higher competition level. And this to me measures my overall concerns about their path. So, the Thompsons certainly have a lot of desirable traits that the modern NBA is always looking for. They have good size, great feel, and tremendous athleticism, and they are both locks to go in the lottery if not significantly higher. And while there are worries about the shot and the level of competition they face, at the end of the day, I just simply think that these guys will both figure it out because they bring so much to the table as NBA prospects. But still, I think Amen and Ausar Thompson provide an interesting case study for the NBA on how they will end up viewing unique players that come from unique backgrounds in the future. But overall, I think these twins are definitely worth betting on. Thanks so much for watching, and give me your thoughts below.